guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Niladri Mukherjee and I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I practice here in Guelph, Ontario. So the topic of the day is how to make your application strong. What are the points that you should definitely keep in mind, or at least you should definitely try to keep in mind or to include in your study permit application if you are a mature international student. All right. So the first and foremost factor that I think you should keep in mind or to include in your study permit application is the fact that before even applying for a study permit application, you have to keep in mind that you should have a stable and lengthy employment history. For example, if you're in your 30s and if you have had your previous education completed, say in the age of, say, for example, 23, in the past 7 years, you have to, have a proper employment history. You should not be switching jobs way too often without having a reason to explain those switches, if you will. And there should not be way too much gaps between two employment. So a stable employment history is definitely a key. It's definitely a positive aspect if you are to apply for a study permit here in Canada as a mature international student. The second factor that you should keep in mind or you should include is that the fact that you should have significant financial assets sitting in your home country, in your bank account, or in some liquid form, which you can demonstrate that you are able to liquidate once your study permit application gets accepted. For example, if you have like funds in your bank account, if you have shares in your Demat account, if you have some kind of mutual funds which can lead to the amount that you would ideally spend here in Canada for your entire education, that is the most ideal circumstance wherein you are able to prove that you do not have to borrow any money from anybody. But I believe that is not the situation most of us would go through, and we will ideally have to borrow money from some financial institutions. So in that case, you really have to prove that you have the means to repay the loan for your loans to be granted. And what if you do not get an employment in Canada right after your education? You have the ability to go back home and to repay all those loans and everything else. So that is also an important factor that you should keep in mind, that you should have significant financial assets at the time of your study permit application. The third factor that you should keep in mind is your education background and your work experience. Now, the more you graduate in your career, the less important your previous education history becomes with respect to your proposed study, yet it is still important. If you are somebody with just 1 or 2 years of experience, and if you're choosing a course here in Canada, you really have to demonstrate how your proposed study is going to benefit you and how that is going to correlate, or how is it correlating with your previous studies back home. If you are somebody with maybe 10 or 15 years of experience, you really have to prove that your proposed study here in Canada is, how is that related to your previous experience, previous work experience, and how is that going to benefit you back home when you go back home and search for employment back home. Because again, you do not have to go back home. The government doesn't want you to go back home, as I have said it before as well, after you complete your study. But yet, as part of the study permit application, you have to prove that you will leave Canada at the end of your stay, right? So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Another factor that you should keep in mind is just directly related to the points that I have just discussed. In your letter of explanation or in the program that you choose and everything else, you have to demonstrate either in the form of documentation or in the form of write-up and both combined, that your proposed study is going to benefit you or going to enhance your employment opportunities back home and not in Canada. Just now, as I have mentioned, you have to prove that, you have to demonstrate that you will leave Canada at the end of your stay after your study, after your study is over, and hence you have to prove that, you have to demonstrate that the proposed study is going to benefit you as a person, your employment opportunities back home, not in Canada. Do not make that mistakes that it is going to give you a job here in Canada. Do not ever write that in your letter of explanation, even if you have that intention in mind, and ideally you should have that intention in mind anyways. That is a mistake that I see a lot of people making, and hence the study permit application gets rejected. So proposed study should correlate with your prospect of employment back home, not in Canada. A very important point to consider. Strong ties to the home country is something that you cannot ignore. So if you have your assets in terms of your real estate properties that you have, that you used to live, or you live currently, if you have an investment property or whatever, if you have any shops that you currently put on rent, if you have a land in your name or in your obviously spouse's name, put all those details. You should have definitely very strong ties to the home country, and this is more important if you're a mature international student. The officer will have to believe again that you would be back to your country, you will leave Canada at the end of your stay. So the more and more sort of tangible fixed assets back home that you have on your name, the more stronger and stronger your application for study permit becomes. Lastly, you should have travel history. You should have some kind of travel history. Now, there is a Supreme Court ruling that says that a travel history does not determine a person's ability to leave Canada, or no person's ability to leave Canada at the end of the stay, as far as any temporary residence is concerned. Still, what I have seen from my experience is that the persons with travel history, with some kind of travel history, some kind of international travel history, obviously, usually have greater chances of success, right? Because officers tend to believe that if you have traveled to the US, for example, maybe to do just for tourism, maybe you had worked previously in the US, and if you're backed on a positive note to your home country, that will make officers believe that you will probably leave Canada at the end of your stay. So these are some of the factors that I thought to bring into your attention if you were to apply to Canada as a prospective international student. But obviously these are not all the sacrosanct factors, and this is not a legal advice, right? These are the general factors that I found based on my work experience. If you need my professional assistance with your study permit application or anything related to your immigration or visas to Canada is concerned, please feel free to drop me a line. I'll be more than happy to help you with. Thank you very much, and see you in the next video. Bye now.